I am beyond excited to have Arno and Mubin with us today, my colleagues from Parents for Peace and my friends. So as we start, I would love for you both of you to share with us your journey and how, kind of like tell us your story. How did you become involved with extremism? What influenced your beliefs at that time? Just kind of let's guide us into it.
I'll
Go
go.
for it, Mubin.
Yeah, I'll go first. Sure. Yeah, my name is Mubin Shaikh. I'm born and raised in Toronto, Canada. The digest version of my story, and it's funny to do it in a digest version because of how much life experience it took out of me and how it defined the rest of my life, really. And just kind of a note of how things that we do seemingly innocuous at the time, the long-lasting implications of that. So I'm born and raised in Toronto, Canada. My parents are Indian Muslims. My parents were both born in India. I'm born and raised in Canada. I was going to Quran school in the evening time, and I was going to public school, secular public school, in the daytime. This, great dichotomy between the two, great contrast. Quran school, very tough environment. You were beaten if you didn't read the Quran properly, put in stress positions, publicly humiliated, boys on one side, girls on the other side, reading the Quran without understanding what it said because we're Indians, we're not Arabs. And juxtapose that with the public school I was going to during the day. Caring, nurturing environment, boys and girls mixing, you weren't beaten or put in stress positions. This, I think, starts to lay the foundation for an identity crisis that hits me later in my life. I get to high school, not bullied, not picked on, not the victim of racism or anything. We were the cool kids of school. Um, Unfortunately, I decided to have a house party while my parents were out, and my uncle walked in on the house party, and my life came crashing down before my very eyes. I had shamed the family. I had desecrated the home. And I thought the only way I'm going to salvage my reputation is to quote unquote get religious. So in the summer of 95, when I was still 19, I went to India and Pakistan. I went on this immersion trip in Pakistan. I ended up having a chance encounter with the Taliban. I became enamored by the Taliban. I saw in them something that I thought I was seeking, this sense of meaning, belonging, identity, something that had a religious, cover. And when I came back, I basically began to become more radicalized, of course. I started to embrace the concept of the global jihadi cause, fight the infidels, everyone's in the infidel. And then I kept that up until the 9/11 attacks. And that actually is what made me reconsider my ideology. And so I would actually leave Canada and go to Syria, and I spent 2 years in Syria from 2002, basically to study Arabic and Islamic studies. While I was there, I went through a period of de-radicalization after studying the scriptures directly, learning the Arabic, and came to realize, oh my God, how badly I got it, and more importantly, how good we have it here in the West, rights as Muslims. And so when I returned back in 2004, I was actually recruited by the Canadian Security Intelligence Service and began working undercover in extremist and terrorist groups. In 2006, there was a big arrest of 18 individuals who were arrested plotting catastrophic terror attacks in Canada. I then spent 4 years in court assisting in the prosecution of these offenses. In 2010, I was done. By 2010, I was done. I was on social media, sort of like I joke, I'm the Muslim James Bond. Um, and uh, and then by 2012, the war in Syria started, but then we also started to see the rise of ISIS in real time. So I went right back into it online, debating them, trolling them, tracking them, ISIS members online for several years, 2012 to 2018 inclusive. And this is where I found Parents for Peace, or Parents for Peace found me. Arno and I actually we met in 2011, I think it was, at the then Google Ideas Summit Against Violent Extremism in Dublin, Ireland, where they brought four categories of violent extremists under the term violent extremism: ultra nationalists, white supremacists, a la Arno, Islamists, a la Mubin, and urban street gangs. and compared and contrasted how people got into the groups, what kept them in the groups, and what got them out of the groups. And surprise, surprise, there's a huge amount of overlap. But this is where we really started to see that, there are people like us who have walked the walk, lived the life, and we know a thing or two about what to do about this sort of stuff. So hopefully we're able to, help your listeners, kind of with some tips and whatnot. But other than that, that's my quick story. I hope it was quick. Over to Arno.
Oh my goodness, it was so fast. And like, take a breath for a second. Also, you forgot to mention that there is a part in the museum in Washington, D.C.
Yes, yes.
What?
Oh,
So I have a permanent exhibit in the new International Spy Museum in Washington, D.C. It's in the section on preventing terror. And please go and say hello when you go to DC.
What? You had said so many things, and so I'll let Arno go, and then I have so many follow-ups.
Yeah, that happens.
It'll be difficult for me to be as succinct as Mubin, but I'll give it a shot. I was born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Raised in a suburb thereof, actually, a bit further up Lake Michigan. Nice house, nice neighborhood. My parents were together. They loved me very much. They let me know that at every turn. I really, at first glance, had a very idyllic childhood that literally billions of children on this planet would feel like they won the lottery if they switched childhoods with me. But as is often the case, beneath that facade of normalcy, there was some dysfunction happening. It was really related to my father's alcoholism. Now, when I say my dad's an alcoholic, a lot of times people are like, oh, dad was violent, he was abusive. But my dad wasn't a mean drunk. My dad was a fun drunk, which meant when dad was drunk, we were going to light off fireworks in the backyard and shoot guns in the basement. We had a pistol range in our basement. And quite often, as soon as I was able to hold a gun, same as my little brother, my dad had us down there at midnight on school nights shooting pistols, which was a lot of fun for us. It wasn't fun for my mom, who at times was working two jobs to keep the bills paid and the lights on in her nice house in a nice neighborhood. And her relationship with my dad sucked. They were constantly fighting, usually about financial stress. And despite my dad's disease, he did the best he could. I think he was a really good dad. But the bottom line is I grew up seeing my mother suffer just with the stress of having all this responsibility on her shoulders. And I responded to that suffering by lashing out at other kids, lashing out at other people. Hurt people is a real common theme in all the work we do, understanding that people who are being hostile or mean or violent are doing it because they have some sort of trauma that they haven't processed in a healthy way. And that was my case as a kid. And it was for no lack of trying. I was presented with a silver platter, all sorts of means of processing my trauma in a healthy way. I just failed to engage with any of it. So I started lashing out at kids, bully on the school bus as early as kindergarten. I got a kick out of it. It became like a thrill for me to disrupt the school bus, disrupt the classroom. And it quickly became an addiction in the sense that what was thrilling yesterday isn't thrilling today. So I got to keep taking it up a notch. And so I went from being a bully on the school bus to fights in the schoolyard, breaking and entering, vandalism. Started drinking myself when I was 14, which was absolutely gasoline on a fire. And by the time I'm 16, I'm a full blown alcoholic. I've been violent since I was a little kid. It's very normalized to me. And hate was just another part of the rush that I was constantly seeking. That's when I was exposed to white nationalism through white power skinhead music via the punk scene. And to me, white nationalism, the idea of being a white power skinhead was extremely attractive, mainly because it was so repulsive to civil society. That's what I found most attractive by it. I didn't have any. I was under no false impressions as to why people were repulsed by swastikas. I had a bit of Holocaust education in middle school and high school. Growing up in the suburb I lived in, there was a lot of Jewish people. I had a lot of Jewish friends growing up. In sixth grade, I went to all sorts of bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs. I, not that there's any justification for anti-Semitism, but I absolutely had none. I had nothing but positive experiences with Jewish people. But the fact that the swastika was so repulsive to civil society, that was like a magnet for me. And I took it and ran with it. Me and my friends started a white power skinhead gang when I was 16. I had been screaming in punk bands for a couple years at that time, and I was pretty good at it. I don't have a lick of musical talent, but I could scream really loud and get people crazy on stage. And I started a white power skinhead band with my buddies. And that band was like a magnet for every pissed off white kid in Wisconsin. And so our crew went from like 4 guys to 10 guys to 20 guys. We started getting attention from like old school neo-Nazis who started crawling out from under their rocks to connect with us. And mind you, this is in the late 1980s, like pre-social media. So any attention we got was when we had like conventional old school newspapers and TV stations doing stories about our antics. And that's what where our claim to fame began, really. And after a while, we started getting national attention from other white power groups. The band was a big part of that as well. And I spent 7 years of my life as a white nationalist. It was far and away the most miserable time of my 54 years. I tried to kill myself twice during that period. It could be argued the whole 7 year span was an ongoing suicide attempt, as I didn't have any regard for my life. I regularly put myself in situations where I could be killed, and I didn't care one bit. I left in 1994 really because of exhaustion. At Parents for Peace, we talk about hate as an addiction, and following that addiction model, if you go to a 12-step meeting of AA or NA or whatever, everyone there is there because they're sick and tired of being sick and tired. That's the exhaustion of addiction. And when people ask me how I got out of the movement, it's the exact same answer. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. Not only the addiction to hate, but being a raging alcoholic as well. This kind of piled on to the exhaustion I was feeling. The exhaustion came from all sorts of directions. I knew what I was doing was wrong. Sometimes even as I'm hitting somebody, like that, I had this inner voice going like, "What the hell's wrong with you? Why are you hitting this person? They didn't do anything. You don't even know this person." And I didn't have the courage to even acknowledge that voice, much less answer it. So that was exhausting. It was exhausting to cut myself off from pop culture that I had really taken for granted and loved my whole life. To this day, I'm a huge TV, film, sports, music geek. I love all those things. When you're a white nationalist, all those things are forbidden. They're all seen as Jewish propaganda to corrupt the minds of white people to make them easier to oppress. So I couldn't watch a Green Bay Packer game. I couldn't watch Hollywood movies. I damn sure couldn't watch Seinfeld, but I did anyway. The first time I saw Seinfeld, even though I was a raging anti-Semite at the time, like I absolutely fell in love with it. Season 2, episode 3, I believe, the pony remark. Still one of my favorite episodes. But that made it really exhausting to be an anti-Semite. That like, oh, I'm blaming Jews for everything wrong in the world, but actually my day-to-day life is a much more joyful process thanks to the genius of Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David and all sorts of other Jewish people. So that was exhausting. But what was most exhausting was when people I claimed to hate treated me with kindness. And I was very fortunate that it happened time and time again throughout that 7 year span. There were people like a Jewish boss, a lesbian supervisor, Afro American, Latino, and Asian coworkers who all treated me with kindness when I least deserved it, but when I needed it most. And in doing so, they really put themselves in a position of power in that they didn't allow me to dictate the rules of engagement, which I wanted to be hostility and hate. And they said, no, let me show you how a human being should treat another human being. And that kindness really drove home how wrong it was to adopt the ideology of white nationalism as my identity. So by 94, I was looking for an excuse to leave. That came in a 2-step process. In early 94, my girlfriend and I broke up, and I became a single parent to my 18-month-old daughter. And a couple months after that, after a concert my band had played, a second friend of mine was shot and killed in a street fight. By that time, I lost count how many friends had been incarcerated. So it finally hit me that if I didn't change my ways, death or prison was going to take me from my daughter. So I left hate groups in 1994. Being a man of extremes, I went from being a violent white power skinhead to being a peace, love, unity, and respect raver in the span of about a year and a half. I found myself on the south side of Chicago at 4 a.m, shaking my ass to house music with 3,000 people of every possible ethnicity, gender identity, socioeconomic background, sexual orientation you can imagine, and really loving every minute of it. And I spent another 7 years in that counterculture, which was really healing and transformative and a real formative part of who I am now. I still love that music. I can't stay up all night or dance all night. My knees can't take it, but I usually make it till 4 in the morning or so nowadays. But I went through that part of my life, stopped drinking in 2004. That was another big milestone. Started writing in 2007. In 2010, I went public with my story on the MLK holiday, inspired by Dr. King's speech, Time to Break the Silence, which was about the Vietnam War, but the title of the speech seemed apt for me. And I've been doing this work ever since. And yeah, Mubin and I met in 2011. That really like transformed my work and the meaning of this as well, because Mubin and I have come to be such dear friends and brothers, and we've done work together all over the world. Have terrorized many rooftop hotel pools, and my advice to Mubin is see what I know the jihadis get caught by their parents when they have a house party. When I had that house party, I had the sense to get the hell out of town before they got home. And that was the big difference. Other than that, we both had a 2 week long raging house party when our parents were gone. So there's all sorts of parallels to our stories here, and we're excited to explore more of them.
Oh my gosh, I love who both of you are. And I was thinking before I do follow-ups with both of you, I was thinking, I mean, in a million years, thinking about this space of an Israeli Jew, an American Jew, a former white supremacist, a former jihadist, all like just chilling out together. I mean,
Not to mention third generation Holocaust survivor. Like,
yes.
There you go.
How
I mean,
radical? Is that what you're trying to say? Yeah.
love it.
so I'm super interested on like so many things that each of you said. So in terms of, I teach at USC. So, all the hate is, every hour. I'm super curious for both of your stories of how like you left it. And I know Mubin, you were saying like you just threw all these things out and I was trying to remember it all, but you were like 9/11. And then Arno was like, my child. And so I'm wondering if you both could talk about that. Like, what was the turning point and how do you leave that? Because I would think if that is your life and you're going to leave it, I would think that that would be a lot also in terms of stress and anxiety or depression or just, because that's who you were.
Yeah, I'll jump on that one. And then Arno, you'll take the questions next, all right? Yeah, like every journey is unique. The factors which bring people in, yes, there are general and common push and pull factors. But I mean it's unique depending on the individual, which factors are going to be the push versus pull factors. And so for me, I think I guess it was an emotional thing first, seeing the 9/11 attacks, right? And thinking, oh my God, like is this my religion? Like I can't be a part of this. So I needed to reconcile with myself real fast that wait a second, what is it that my religion actually teaches? And what is it that I'm actually signing up for, so to speak? So there was that, I think, very public traumatic moment that everybody was seeing. And that's, I think, the question for our generation, right? Where were you on 9/11, right? And so, and even just on that day, like even though it was, because in the beginning of the day, I remember driving to work. I'll never forget. It was Tuesday morning. I heard on the radio a plane hit the building, and I thought to myself, "Oh no!" I'm like, "A plane hit the building? What?" And then I got to my workplace, and what was interesting is there's a driveway that you drive up, and then you see the building, and then immediately the vision came in my head. What if a plane flew into this building right now? Right? And then the second plane hit, and then I thought, oh God, please don't let this be Muslims. and I stopped saying that for 20 years. Um, and then I went home and my wife was like glued to the TV and she's like, and she even made the comment. She's like, "Hey, because you sure you don't have anything to do with this? Because people are calling the house and they're calling to see where I am and where my headspace is at too. Like, what do you think of this? Is this what you believe, Mubin? Is this what you've become?" And what I didn't mention after my trip to 19 to India and Pakistan in 95, I came back and like I started to grow a full beard. I had a black turban. I wore robes. Like I look the part and I did that for almost 15 years. Right, worked very well in my undercover years, of course, but so the main thing is that the emotional part of it, then this intellectual debate within myself that I don't know the religion, I don't know the Arabic. I need to go. So if I can nerd out for a second, this is like a egoistic deprivation where you feel that you yourself personally are lacking something and you need to go and get it. Or if it's fraternal deprivation, that my people, however you define that, are lacking something or are suffering, then you can get, vicarious suffering from that. So in my egoistic deprivation, I went and I sought out religious studies, and that's what really, and it's not a overnight process, of course. Now I did have the, if I can use the word, benefit of having this mass traumatic event because that really brought it to the fore. Right. But for many people where you don't have that, it's like a buildup, a collection of incidents, one after the other. And even before 9/11, I started to see some of those things. Like I got married in 98 and I felt that especially in my worldview of starting a family, that whole idea of being a husband, being a Muslim man and doing all that stuff that was kind of expected of us, I felt that I had achieved or at least begun to achieve part of that. So hanging out with these guys and talking about that stuff didn't really become so interesting anymore. And then so finally, the time in Syria when I actually went through the scriptures verse by verse, literally verse by verse, and I realized that, oh my God. And this was the sheikh at the time. He said, these are Sufi sheikhs, right? So the Sufis basically saved my Islam, I say. Without the Sufis, I would not be Muslim. I'll be honest. Just the example that I see, unfortunately, in the Muslim world, it's just it's sad, right? But well, we can get to some of that. But long story short, the sheikh said to me, and I wore glasses at the time, so he says, I'm going to give you a new pair of glasses by which to view the world. And in social work, this is like reframing. And so I went through this reframing process of like looking at things in a different way. And all of those things together is what created this de-radicalization consequence. So that's basically how I quote unquote got out.
I think what
Amazing.
Mubin, what you were saying, and Arno, what you said before also about your daughter, it's that your values changed and your point of interest changed as well, right? So Arno, if I remember correctly, like the with your daughter, everything, what you cared about changed in terms of where the emphasis is. And Mubin, what you're describing is very similar, where starting to question, where are my values? Where should they be? The hierarchy has changed, things have changed.
Yeah, I was gonna say the priorities, right? The priorities
Priority.
have changed.
Yeah.
Now it's not so much, fight the kuffar wherever they are. Now it's like I have to change diapers.
Hmm.
I need to pay bills. I can't be debating with people at work about religion and politics and be at risk of losing my job, right? So yeah, the priorities change. But again, this is not true for everybody. Again, it's a very unique process. Some people they get married and they abandon their families to go out and live their jihadist fantasies, right? We saw with ISIS travelers and things like that. So yeah, I think the values and what's interesting is one thing I leave out sometimes is in my teenage years from 14 to 19, I was in the Army cadets. And you guys call it a junior ROTC in the US and I learned patriotism and like Flag Day, February 15, 1965, and all that stuff. But then I think I was still attracted or I was still being influenced by the family and the religious community, and that was the more dominant pressure that was on me. And so even though I kind of did stray from the that army cadet mentality and all of that and I went where I did in fact come back. And I self-psychoanalyzed and I thought that I was regressing back to a time when I think I was more stable, because when I got super religious, that I think started my trajectory of instability. And what preceded that? It was the Army cadets. And so when I came back in 2004 and signed up with the intelligence service, that was me, I think, subconsciously acknowledging that hyper religious fixation is what took me on the wrong path. And so I kind of did return back to that, and then some. Like, I really doubled down on it, right? And even after, when the community became aware of the fact that I was the undercover, because it went to court and everything became public, everybody turned on me, and it was like, and now I was thrown into a whole new thing of I don't know, maybe this is a, sorry, maybe this is a question that you have later on about how do you kind of navigate the, because it was effectively the community, outgrouping me. And when you have built your sense of meaning, belonging, and identity and worth and value based on your reception by the community, and now that community is saying you're no longer with us, now what? And so I had to, second guessed my whole faith status. I thought to myself, like, you're telling us, you're clamoring to get on TV to say Islam is against terrorism. Islam is against terrorism. Well, I'm actually doing something about it. And the response is, well, not like that though. And so I was just, and I had to kind of rethink everything again, like what, and so again, when I say that Sufism kind of saved my Islam, is that I realized that no, it's often that the majority are wrong, and you are that voice in the wilderness, and you're like, and you're just overtaken by, like, am I the crazy one, or is it possible that everybody else is crazy? And so I think this is kind of where we find ourselves today, right? And especially with the
Yes.
the campus situation, where it's like, really, like, all these people, like, have you listened to anything, have you researched anything, and you're just so frustrated at, like, how did we get to this point? So
Perfect segue to my next question, Arno. How would you compare radicalization and hate from your history and what you see and hear about here today, specifically, like Mubin was saying, on college campuses? Because I definitely had that moment, like, is everybody crazy? Am I crazy? What the heck
Right.
is happening?
Same. Yeah.
Well, first off, what has struck me hardest since October 7th, 2023, after just the sheer horror of what happened to 1,200 innocent Israelis and everyone who was taken hostage, is that the rhetoric of the so-called anti-Zionist movement is in many cases, word for word, the exact same anti-Semitic rhetoric that I used as a white nationalist in the late 80s and early 90s, and the exact same anti-Semitic rhetoric that white nationalists use today. So that's when people are like,
Wow.
well, anti-Zionism isn't anti-Semitism. And I'm like, well, they both stem from the plagiarized hoax of the protocols of the learned elders of Zion. They both say the exact same things, that Jews are shady manipulators from some nebulous place controlling the world and using money and controlling the media and controlling the government. Like, there's no difference between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. They're, to me, as a former rabid anti-Semite, I see no space between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. And what shocks me is that when I was a white nationalist, we'd often use the term Zionist occupational government when referring to the United States government. That's what we called it. We felt that the United States government was controlled by Zionists and they were occupying our country. So here, after this horrific attack on innocent people in Israel, the global response isn't to say, like, wow, that was a horrific attack, we need to go stand with those people who were just attacked, as we stood with the victims of the Christchurch attack in New Zealand, or the Itoya attack in Norway, or the attack on the Sikh temple in Wisconsin, or the attack on the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, or the attack in El Paso and Buffalo. We honestly don't have time for me to list all the white nationalist and or Islamist mass casualty attacks that have happened in the past couple decades. But the big difference is after every one of those other attacks, everybody from all different demographics came and stood with the people who were targeted. Whereas on October 7th, half the world not only didn't stand with the people who were targeted, they blamed the people who were targeted for the attack that happened to them. That to this day stuns me. I every single day since October 7th, 2023, I have a hard time processing that and even like accepting that that's the case. But as far as the similarities go, we talked about this at the conference, Mary. If a white nationalist says Zionist occupational government, white power, everyone's like, oh, that's horrible. You're a bad Nazi anti-Semite. If a kid on a campus says Zionist occupational government, free Palestine, everybody's like, yay. At the Oscars, they'll be like, yay, Zionist occupational government, free Palestine. And it's just this absolute, like you said, Mubin, am I the only one understanding things here? Is everybody insane? Has the whole world lost its mind? Like, as a former white nationalist, that's a feeling I've been having every single day since October 7th, 2023.
Yeah, I wanted to just, if I could, again, just I was really stunned. I was stunned at how after the attacks, people went out and effectively celebrated. And this was like a good thing. And then I started to see people, what you're dealing with are not even, it's like Islamo-Marxists is what you're dealing with. These the just stunning to see that when now we're kidnapping babies and old people. Like that's quote unquote, now you're calling this resistance? Like it just boggles my mind that people, like, how their brains can, we understand how their brains can get to that point, but just even from my perspective, because I had some like extended family members who were like, because they know what I do and this and that, and they're like, oh, hey, you see what Hamas did? I'm like, what did they do? I'm like, so I think, and I think only a few voices are coming out, but I was pleasantly surprised. The head of Sharia at Gaza Islamic University came out and condemned Hamas, and did so on the basis of, oh, you don't engage in wars when you know the enemy is going to completely annihilate you, right? Like you go into a war thinking you're going to win because you've positioned yourself that way. So, and not, protecting the civilians from bombardments and things like that, because we know they use mosques, they use kindergarten schools, right? And just look at the rhetoric, it's a genocide, it's starvation. I mean, Hamas has hundreds of millions of dollars. I think the last was like $300 million budget that they're getting from, Iran and other countries. And it's a famine. And like you had all this money and all you were able to build were tunnels underneath the ground. So people are starting to see the hypocrisy of that. And, I also saw, the Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia, blasting them for bringing out the coffins of those babies, putting, saying that they were arrested. Like, how do you arrest an infant? Like holding
Right.
infants accountable for what like adults have done. So I think these are avenues to exploit. And maybe we'll get to that as a question in terms of strategies that people can use. But I think people should understand that you may not hear it a lot, you may not see it. Yes, you're seeing all these Marxist students at college campuses. You're not seeing largely so Mohammed's and Abdullah's getting arrested. It's Roberts and Mary's, right?
Right.
Because they're living again. And when I say, and I'll close with this, I really do, I think it's just Marxism is what it is. The revolutionary ideology, resistance ideology, settler colonialist theories, things like that. And because they've been studying it and studying it and studying it, they're primed to look for it everywhere. So now a country like Israel, which it just it to me it's amusing, but unfortunately it's so dangerous. But to call Israel a colonizing state, when in fact Palestine is the British mandate for Palestine. I mean, they're the godfathers of colonization. They
And the
created
name
Palestine.
Palestine was from the Romans.
The British created Palestine. So I'm like, that is the colonial entity, right? Israel fought the British. There was a whole, big controversies, bombing of the King David Hotel in Jerusalem, British officers killed. I mean, they were fighting the colonizers, right? And Israel emerged in a time when other post-colonial nations were emerging. So it's the historical narrative I think people need to kind of wrap their heads around rather than this. I hate to say it, like it's a manufactured identity, Palestinian people, as if they are some like unique group and they had their own country and the dirty Jews came and took it over. And I gotta say, and I'll leave with this, as a Muslim, I kind of feel jealous. Like the Jews, you got the money, you got the weather, you got everything. I'm like, am I on the right side here? Like, what the hell? And I even tell them, I mock them and I say, as our creed of faith is La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. There's no God but Allah and Muhammad is his messenger. Well, I said, you guys should actually change that. La ilaha illa CIA wa Mossad Rasuliha, because you make them your gods. You believe they're responsible for everything, and so it makes me, I'm just disgusted. I have like contempt that you have just lowered yourself to this level where you think like bellowing like farm animals on a campus is going to free Palestine. Is it free yet? Is it free yet? Is it free yet? No. So I'm just
Oh
really
my God.
frustrated at the whole thing.
I wish we controlled the
Sorry,
media.
I had to go off. I had
I'm
to.
so glad you went off. I mean, yeah, if we controlled the media, like this whole social media war wouldn't have even been going down. I mean, October 8th started and we were like, wait, what? Um, so as you both have been talking about your journeys, and then I'm thinking about students, like they're feeling a sense of belonging, like they're part of. And so I think about sort of coming off extremism and sort of how students and how you both navigated like coming off extremism, because I would think that that would be emotionally overwhelming, and everything you witnessed of like PTSD and experienced all those things. Because then I think, how do we ask students to come off of it when maybe they don't have something on the other side?
Well, it's important to understand too that they're high on it. They are high. They are blazed out of their gourds on hatred for Israel. The same way any white nationalist or Islamist is blazed out of their gourd on their hatred for Jews. It's again looking at hate as a drug. Neuroscientists have analyzed the parts of our brain that are activated when we're on alcohol or drugs and the parts of our brain that are activated when we're on hate. And there is a lot of overlap there. It's some of the same areas in the brain that are stimulated. And the big difference is when I quit drinking in 2004, I haven't had a drop in 21 years and I couldn't be happy about it. But when I was an alcoholic, like I had to go get my alcohol. It's easy, it's legal, but I gotta go get it. I gotta go to the grocery store, the liquor store, get my beer, get my vodka, whatever, and before I can take it in. If I'm addicted to crack cocaine, I'm gonna spend my entire day trying to get my money to go get my crack. And so I have to get the money and then I gotta go find my crack dealer, which usually isn't hard to find. But either way, there's like a process to obtaining the substance that you're addicted to. When you're addicted to hate, this is all you need. You need this and a data connection. And you literally have a mainline connection to all the hate you can possibly intake. And these kids on campuses now are in the throes of a hate high. And honestly, you can't reach them when they're in that space. I, as an alcoholic, know that you don't go talk to an alcoholic about his drinking when he's drunk.
Right.
It's just not, it's not going to land. It's not the time. There's a concept in recovery called rock bottom. Again, if you go to a 12-step meeting, at AA meeting, everybody there had a rock bottom moment as to, okay, I got to stop drinking and I need help to do it. I can't do it on my own. I don't know that I had a particular rock bottom moment, but that exhaustion throughout my experience as a white nationalist was like my ongoing rock bottom. I know all sorts of other former violent extremists like myself and Mubin. We refer to ourselves as formers in this space. Every former I know, regardless of what flavor of violent extremism they're in, had some sort of rock bottom moment. These kids on the campus are going to have their rock bottom moments. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. The when may be when their scholarship gets canceled, or when their visa gets canceled, or when their school loses $400 million worth of federal funding for being rabidly anti-Semitic. Who knows what that rock bottom moment is, but there are consequences to hate addiction. And again, it's not a matter of if you're going to experience them, it's a matter of when. So I think what's important when addressing this campus radicalization, as you would in any radicalization, is first of all, make the point that change is possible. That no matter how deep into this you get, it's always possible to stop and turn around and become a better person and lead a better life, a happier life is what's very important here. These people on the campuses, as high as they are, they're miserable. They may feel like they're on top of the world when they're surrounded by their kafaya homies and they're all chanting bomb Tel Aviv. Like that's a big rush. I get it. But in the wee hours of the morning or the wee hours of the next day, that's it's going to weigh upon them the same way it weighed upon me when I was beating the hell out of someone who didn't look like me just because that was my ideology. So it's not a great answer to say we got to wait till they hit their rock bottom and then help them out. The way we can help that along is, first of all, continue to make the point of the parallels between Islamism and white nationalism, which Mubin and I have been doing for what 14 years now.
Yeah.
Make the point of the word for word similarities of the anti-Semitic rhetoric that comes from white nationalists and from the so-called pro-Palestine movement. I say so-called because anyone cheering on Hamas is not pro-Palestine. If you care
Right.
one bit about Palestinian people and you want to see them live in peace and prosperity, Hamas is the single biggest obstacle to that in the world. So anyone who's pro-Palestine would be anti-Hamas, and these demonstrations are clearly not. They're very pro-Hamas. But in any case, make the point that they share the same ideas as neo-Nazis, and that they, because they say free Palestine after their rhetoric instead of white power, it doesn't really make a damn bit of difference.
So,
Oh, go ahead.
I have this, well, you guys can see it because I'm holding it up there, but you can see it's a Hamas guy next to a KKK guy, right? It says militant Islam on, and it says, our battle against the Jews is holy. We have nothing to hide. And then next to him is a KKK guy with a hood on and a shotgun saying, you tell him, right? And
I put that on my Instagram, and
yeah,
I still get hate comments about it.
yeah, good.
Like, what the hell would I know about
Yeah.
anti-Semitic radicalization? I guess not
Well, I mean,
much, but
and we know
it's
this. I mean,
very apt.
going back to the whole Mufti of Palestine, right? Trying
Yep.
to do his whole thing and pushing this whole thing, and you know, I think also, and I'll just to piggyback off of what Arno was saying about like what else we can do. We can help the process along, right? I think that people need to be reminded, if for those who are able to actually engage in some kind of cognitive discussion with, for the Muslims, I say to them that, well, you will continue to fail because you're breaking your own laws of Islam, thinking that somehow, and so this is a thing, a lot of people that I have realized that the cause is holier than the religion itself. It's been superseded. You know, if the prophet came and said some of the things that he said back in the day, they would call him an infidel. That's how it is. So I think they need to be reminded, like for those who are at least religiously minded or come from Muslim background, is that you're breaking your own laws of Islam. How is God going to give you victory if you're breaking your own laws? And that's why you can look and see for the past, 70 years that Arab armies have tried to, Marxist armies from the 40s and 70s, remember the pan-Arab socialism of Egypt, Iraq, and Syria, they tried again and again and again, and they failed, and they failed, and they failed. So what does that tell you? And so to think that this same tactic, you're going to get some different result, we call that insanity, right?
Right.
So you should ask them, is Palestine free now after all this stuff that you've done and after all this stuff that Hamas did? What is left of Palestine? So I think you can give them the look for your own self and see what the results of your tactics are.
I love that. Go ahead, Barry.
Sorry, let me ask you. So connecting it to the work at Parents for Peace, and maybe both of you can share more about the work of Parents for Peace. What are some specific things that we can engage either with campus educators or with parents or anyone to first see what are the warning signs for radicalization, but also what can we do to help people get out of this cycle? Because like what you both of you are saying, it's everywhere because of social media. It's kind of cool right now to be a Jew hater. So it's part of Mubin, you talked before about the in-group and out-group. Jews are definitely the out group right now. Like nobody wants to be associated with Jews. And it's obviously affecting the mental health aspect of a lot of people, Jewish and non-Jewish. There is the mental health aspect of anti-Semitism, but everyone are vulnerable to radicalization. Like you mentioned, it's the thing that connects all the hate group together is the Jew hate. Yay, winning here.
Anti-Semitism is the connective tissue of all violent extremism. Whether it's right wing, left wing, religious, racial, and that goes for white racial or black racial, what have you. Anti-Semitism is the one thing they all agree on, and it's also the thing they're willing to put any other differences aside about. If in the 2024 presidential election, David Duke, like elder statesman of the Ku Klux Klan in the United States, endorsed Jill Stein for president because he vibed out on her hatred of Israel. And as much as he agreed with Trump and all sorts of with the xenophobe with his Trump's policies, Trump's endorsement and advocacy for Israel was just a line that David Duke would not cross. So he threw aside all this other synergy he had and threw in with the far left candidate for president because they both agreed on their hatred of Israel. As far as what we can do about it and the Parents for Peace approach, it's really about looking at our shared humanity. I'm also very honored to be part of another organization called the Pro-Human Foundation. You can see that at prohumanfoundation.org. And at Pro-Human Foundation, we really center on that shared humanity and the core values of shared humanity. Things like gratitude, optimism, and grit, things like curiosity, courage, and compassion, and then bringing it in together in a social way with fairness, understanding, and humanity. All of these aspects of our shared humanity are things that resonate with all human beings, even if we're under the influence of hate or some other kind of addiction. Those qualities are things that move us at our core, as is, I believe, the truth that, and this is a really beautiful kind of contradiction in the human experience. There's 8 billion some odd people on this planet. Every single one of them, including the most identical of identical twins, is a unique individual. And at the same time, we all have shared values. We all have shared experiences one way or another. There's always some sort of overlap about what we've been through in life, where we want to go, how we see ourselves. And that real magic of the human condition, I think, is something to celebrate, and it's something that we can build a foundation with that can work towards a society where our social soil is not so conducive to hate and violence.
For sure. I love that. And, going back to what Mubin was also saying, so last season, Jonah Platt was on the podcast. And I just read something that he wrote, which was, it's not about pro-Israel or pro-Palestine, it's pro-Jew or pro-Jihadist. Either way, you're holding Palestinians, but in a different way. Because you can be pro-Jewish and you're pro-Palestine, you're pro-Palestinians, But if you're a pro-jihadist, it's going to be a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, I think that's a really proper way to frame it, and that's the thing. I everyone wants to frame this as Israel versus Palestine or Muslims versus Jews. That's the Hamas narrative. The Hamas narrative is that it's the entire Muslim Ummah against these evil, dirty Jews. And interestingly, again, the exact same thing as the white nationalist narrative. And again, and this is common to all violent extremist groups, violent extremists tend to speak for huge groups that they may tangentially be a part of, but they really have no right to speak for. When I was a white nationalist, I was like, the white race this and the white race that. Whereas 95% of the people racialized as white don't think like me and don't agree with me, even though I don't hesitate to speak for them all. And the same goes for violent Islamists. The Muslim Ummah is 1.8 billion, approaching 2 billion people. And by no means do all 2 billion of those people agree with Hamas, ISIS, Muslim Brotherhood, the people who've hijacked Iran, what have you. Like these are a small splinter groups that assume to speak for larger groups, and that right away should give away that they're full of nonsense. But other than that, it's really important, as you pointed out, Susie, to reframe the narrative as to this is against a particular group of violent extremists. It's not against Palestinians. It's not against Muslim people. And by the way, there are 2 million Palestinian Arab Muslims who are citizens of Israel, and they actually enjoy the highest standard of life of any Arabs in the area who aren't Emiratis or Saudis. But it's pushing back against these like broad sweeping us versus them narratives and really kind of focusing back to say, look, this is about a particular violent extremist group that is extremely well funded and extremely dangerous, and they're attacking Israel right now, and that's who the conflict is between.
So what do you suggest, Mubin, in terms of what do Parents for Peace, like what do they do knowing that the college students, they're in the addiction of hate and they're, not leaving right now. So what do Parents for Peace do, or what can you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, I think, given the name of our organization too, Parents for Peace, and it basically, it's reminding us, especially those of us who are parents and those of your listeners who are parents who have students on campus. I mean, when you tighten the purse strings of the addict, they start to they'll go through a kind of withdrawal. It's gonna happen, but that's how you have to treat it, right? And I'm shocked at how these people can take over campuses like in the manner in which they do, like they're fighting a war, right? Like your students on a campus, like that's not the place for that, right? Like yes, you can protest, you can do all that, but like blocking people from going to school, people who pay a lot of money to go to school. So you will see a change now that I'm, pleasantly surprised to have seen that, withholding of federal funds, like at the government level, at the parent level, for, to pay attention to, like, get involved in your kid's life. Tell them straight, like, hey, like, do you really want this to define the rest of your future? Because in this day and age where everybody's information is out there and recorded, people are going to know that you were involved in this stuff. And later down in the future, it will bite you in the behind. It's going to happen, right? Yeah, you have freedom, but you don't have freedom from consequences, right? So I think parents need to see that. In terms of radicalization per se, like once you start to see, I mean, okay, I don't know if the Palestine flag is now the symbol of radicalization, but you have plenty of other flags that nobody has any business flying. Hezbollah flags? Like, how is this possible? I thought, I don't know, is it according to your First Amendment, is that legal? Like, I would consider that glorification of terrorism,
Mm-hmm.
right? Sinwar flags and red triangle flags, and like, is Iran like funding these protests? Because and don't be surprised. I mean, those of us who look at it at the strategic security level, you do have state actors who are also exacerbating the situation and radicalizing your kids, right? And the same thing will happen to and I'm talking to the parents, like when ISIS kids were leaving their homes and emptying bank accounts and doing stupid crap that kids do because they think they found the cause and they are the most authentic representations of the cause. And of course, you, the parents, even your sellouts, after all the hard work you have done in your life, busting your butt to get where you've gotten, to have some brat kid basically say, "Oh, no, you're a sellout. You're this, you're that." And no, you're a mature adult who's got bills to pay and a life to live. And these kids are not thinking like that. So have this kind of conversation with your kids. I mean, that's the only way it will get to them. Once they realize how it's going to adversely impact them personally, they will start to listen. But
And
if you give the just last one, if you give all the outside stuff like the cognitive and the abstract and ideologically, forget it. You're just gonna get
Yeah.
in. You're gonna get waste your time in just debating and arguing, and you'll just never get anywhere. So
So what's the concrete though that parents can say that's not like all abstracty?
you're gonna
well,
pay me back the student loans that I paid for you. That's what the tuition that I had to pay for you. Yeah, you're gonna work your butt off to pay it back. That's what you got to tell them. Watch
well,
how quickly they change.
and I'm sure that carries a lot of weight. It really, to me, the practical answer is this. And interestingly, this is a question I get. I've been doing this for 15 years, and up until October 7th, 2023, much of my audience has been on the more progressive side of the spectrum. I've lost about 2/3 of that audience now because they all say I'm still a Nazi because I support Israel's right to exist, which I think is comical at best, ridiculous at worst. But in any case, back then, the question I always get asked, like, how do I talk to racist Uncle Frankie at Thanksgiving? Or how do I talk to my son who's not voting the way I want him to, and he's doing all this alt-right stuff? Anytime you're talking about a rightward radicalization or a whiteward radicalization, they all want to know, how do you talk to this person? Well, incidentally, it's the same way you'd talk to a leftward radicalization or a brownward radicalization or what have you. And the way that is just as Mubin pointed out, when you're talking to a radicalized person, the first thing they want to talk about is all these macro issues. They're Palestine this and Palestine that. Okay, first question is like, have you ever been to Palestine? And quite often I've had people say, yes, I did my master's there and I stayed in Gaza for 6 months. And so there are people who do have firsthand experience, albeit a very biased firsthand experience in the region, but most of them don't. Most of them don't have firsthand experience. And so the first thing I would say to them is like, you have very strong opinions on this issue. Do you realize that your opinions are being fed to you by like the backwaters of the internet, by TikTok?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it be wiser to study independently and read and listen to people from this area and do it with an objective, open mindset rather than coming in with biases to confirm depending on who you're going to listen to? So challenge them individually to move out of that space they're in, just in the sense of that they're not getting all this information firsthand. It's being fed to them by people with very plain agendas. But beyond that, and this is very much the Parents for Peace technique, and it's a technique that I think anyone can adopt, is rather than allowing the conversation to remain about Israel and Palestine or a wall on the southern border of the United States or the Ukraine or whatever macro issue that they're fixated on, bring it back to them. Like, what happened in your life that makes this issue so important to you? And then see how they answer and get them talking about themselves and their own experience. And once you're having multiple conversations on that level about who they are and why they think the way they do, aside from backwater internet things that they've taken in, once you get them talking on that level, then you can also get them talking about their future and where they want to go in life, and what their ideal life is going to look like. So it's like, hey, where do you want to be in 5 years? Well, in 5 years, I want to see Israel annihilated and the Palestinian people. Okay, yeah, I get that. Where do you, Bob Smith, want to be in 5 years? What are you going to be doing? And keep bringing it back to them on a personal level rather than allowing them to control the conversation on this nebulous macro level.
I love that because I think that what you're bringing back to the table is going back to the humanity piece, is seeing a person and their own personal story. Someone once told me this amazing quote, a professor from Vassar College, Deborah, and she said that trauma can be a general thing, but it's also a very personal thing, right? And I think that for every story, the story can be on the macro. It can, all of us have different stories, but if you zoom into the personal and actually see the person in front of you, and you take away some of the hate and you take away all of the noise, my hope is that the core is a person with a story, and being able to see that person, and what you're saying, Arno, is connecting to that as well as a way of getting them out of the hate cycle. It's bringing back the I'll see you, can you see me as well as a human being with
Absolutely.
values, with feelings, with humanity. And I think that's what one of the things I love about Parents for Peace is that, the slogan, you don't have to worry alone. And I think for me, I don't feel like I mean, at least since I joined Parents for Peace, I don't feel like I need to worry alone because I have people like you by my side who restore that goodness and the hope in humanity. Um,
Absolutely. And likewise, Mary.
and I think, for our listeners who, especially parents, and Arno, you and I got that question quite at the ADL quite often is, um, what are some warning signs? Like, how do I know that my kid is being radicalized or brainwashed? What do I do? No, well, we answer what do I do, but how do you know? Yeah, so Arno's
Oh,
on his
It's
phone.
hard because every human being on this planet's like this
I
right now,
know.
whether they're taking in some like jihadist TikTok or white nationalist meme,
Or just
or
Instagram.
they're just watching a cat video or playing Candy Crush. Like either way, screen addiction has many manifestations outside of like actual hate radicalization. That is like symptom number one. It's just to be like, okay, schedule some time every day where this is not part of it. Whether start with a half hour if that's all you can bear.
mm.
Then build your way up. I typically do about 2 hours a day at my health club when I'm home, where I'm exercising and stretching and just reading magazines, like the old school
Oh, like
analog
real magazines, like
magazines
hardcore.
made out of
Oh.
paper. And I can tell you if I didn't do that, I would I'm always pretty insane, but I would be a lot more insane than I am if I didn't have that time. So just encouraging screen time diets and trying to get some kind of screen time hygiene is really important. As far as warning signs go, like I said, it's kind of a it's like a grain of sand is a warning sign on the beach if we say screens are, because everybody looks at screens. But I do think the more and more withdrawn a person becomes, the less and less in real life conversations they're having. That's a warning sign in general. It may not necessarily be because of radicalization, but it could lead to other forms of self harm. And obviously, if someone is thinking in a binary way, binary thinking, I think, is a big warning sign. I was at a conference, NYPD conference, and there were some people from DHS there, and they said, how do you know that someone is moving out of radicalization? And I was like, I don't know. Get it? And I know I don't get it. I'm like, if I can hear somebody say, if they can answer a question with I don't know, that's a really healthy sign. Rather than
Flexible
having
thinking.
Right, rather than having an immediate binary answer for every issue and question in the planet, if they can say, you know what, I don't really know enough about that to have a strong opinion, or I need to learn more
Oh, I love
before I
that.
can take a position, like that's a very healthy sign. that that person is in a healthy place, because that's what a healthy person would answer to all these ridiculously complex macro political questions. An unhealthy person is a person who has immediate answers like that. So I think binary thinking is a big warning sign, and on the contrary, curiosity, as we mentioned, as a pro-human foundation value, curiosity is a really healthy sign that things are going to be okay and they're headed in the right direction.
Mubin,
Oh,
anything you can add to that?
Oh yeah.
oh,
Yeah, I
good.
was just like, yeah, Arno, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you could, you can, I mean, we have to be careful with this, like, indicator list type approach,
Mm.
because sometimes, something by itself may not be. I'm not gonna say somebody wearing a keffiyeh and going there, that's radicalization per se, but add that. Think of clusters of behaviors as well, right? Death rhetoric, making your own propaganda videos. Then you start to get more, you can see how people progress on the pathway to violence, where now people are doing now more sophisticated activities like surveilling places and taking photos and being really really like secretive about their internet use, using a lot more encryption, this and that. I get it. I'm not saying, I mean, I use encryption too, but it's again clusters of behaviors. So when suddenly they found this new cause and they found these new group of friends and now they want to do these new things, now you can start to see how these things start to become actual warning signs. So just in addition to what, of course, what Arno said as well, looking for those things is definitely the way to go.
Love it. And if you have any doubt, call Parents for Peace because we'll guide you through it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, two last questions. This is for each one of you. What will you do for your own healing this week?
No, that was the one from last season.
Are we not doing this anymore? Okay, and delete
I
the new.
like that one.
I mean, it's a good one. Should we do?
Let's keep it. I do like it.
Okay, so we're gonna keep it. Do we get rid of number 10 then?
Up to you.
Okay, so let's start. All right, Ian, you know what to do.
Okay, so what are you going to do for your own healing this week?
I am going to go to my health club this afternoon, and I do about 15 minutes in the sauna. I call it Arnoga. I do some stretching and body weight exercises, and then I get in a deep 7 foot deep pool, and I'm gonna tread water for about a half hour, just being in the water and moving and floating. And then I'm gonna get in the steam room and then the jacuzzi, and I'm gonna read a magazine, paper magazine.
A real one. That
Yeah,
sounds like a
that's
dream. All of what you just said sounds so dreamy.
cold shower in between the steam room and jacuzzi.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
afterwards, I get my nice, get clean shower, and then I come home. My other absolutely vital self care routine. He's abandoned me now. He was on my lap before, but I have a wee dog named Basil Tortellini, and just hanging out with Basil every day is in all seriousness, like, it's really profound to me. I sit and I have this little creature on my lap and I'm petting him, and he's so happy and content, and I'm happy and content. And I honestly, I do think, like, people in Gaza aren't able to sit there with their dog on their lap really and just relax. People in Israel aren't able to do that. People all over the world in all sorts of arduous situations can't have this very simple primal joy that I'm having right now with this amazing little dog who's in my life. And I'm deeply, deeply grateful for that. And at the same time, mindful that unfortunately it is a privilege to be able to just have a leisure time with a pet. So little things like that are really my bread and butter as far as my own wellness and healing goes. And and on top of that, I meditate. I'm a Buddhist, so I sit and, as one Buddhist teacher put it once, we get together or we sit for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour a day thinking about our best friend in kindergarten. That's kind of what meditation's like. But in all seriousness, my meditation is just trying to focus on my breath and be present And as I'm focusing on my breath, of course, a thought of this or that will come and intrude. And I just dismiss the thought. I return my focus to my breath, and I do it gently. I do it with forgiveness and with compassion and kindness for myself. So I'm practicing all those things as I'm also practicing being present. And
Wow.
the
Mindfulness
Love.
and gratitude.
absolutely, yeah. The first thoughts I always have when I sit down to meditate is I sit and I take a big deep breath and I go, there's my breath. Not like how my breath smells, but like can be good or bad, but just the fact that I'm breathing and I can feel my breath entering my body and leaving my body, and I'm grateful for it. Like when you can be grateful to breathe, and just in that moment at least, you've won life.
Mm.
Mubin, what
Nice.
about
Yeah, I think Arno, you missed the massage in that little health club thing there. I was like, yes, yes, cold shower before the thing, check mark, check mark. Yo, where's the massage?
I have
Um,
a bulging disc in my neck, and
yeah, so the pressure on that.
even though massages feel good in the moment, like sometimes afterwards it can kick off migraines. So I don't
Yeah.
do massage too often, honestly.
I
But
like traditional Thai massage.
oh
I've been
Yes.
yeah,
doing it for 30 years. I've been doing
Love
Muay
that.
Thai, been doing Thai boxing for 30 years.
Mm.
So and that I swear by it, right? But yeah, I like for me it's staying fit. I like to go to the gym. That's my thing. Um, my kid now, he's 19 and he's a Muay Thai fighter and he's got a fight coming up and so he's doing the training and I think the healing is an ongoing process because there are things that still from the past that are still there that still kind of, your inner voice kind of reminds you of it, and it just reminds you that it is an ongoing process, right? To protecting yourself from injuries, moral injuries. It's just a lifelong process. So my thing is just get in the gym, lift some weights. I went last night. That's why I'm going for the massage later. Um, yeah, so that's it. Train, train, train.
I love it. And our final question for you both is what was it like for you to tell your story today?
it was an honor, and I've been telling my story for 15 years, and a lot of feedback I get like, wow, that was so amazing, like you're so open and so honest, and I'm glad that people get that out of my storytelling, and that's certainly a mission accomplished for me. But I always have to point out that, as we mentioned earlier, all 8 billion of us are all unique individuals, and one thing about me as a unique individual is that it would be much more difficult to just shut the hell up and not tell my story than it is to tell it. So I enjoy storytelling. Every time I get a chance to tell my story, it's a gift for me. It's a step forward in my healing. So I'm so grateful to both you and Mary Susie and to everyone who's listening and everybody at Trauma Informed LA for giving me a chance to tell my story again, because it's a wonderful gift that I couldn't really ask for a whole lot more. And beyond that, I would just emphasize again how underrated and how valuable listening is. So
Mm.
when we listen to each other, it's just one of the greatest gifts we can give. And we need to be as generous with our listening as we could possibly be. And I want to thank you all again for being generous to me.
Mm.
Wow, perfect answer. Yeah, no, I mean, same thing. It really is an honor and a privilege for us to be joined by yourself, Susie, and Miri and Arno, where it's always a pleasure waging peace
You
alongside
know
this
it,
great
brother.
group of people. And I come from the religious side of things, and I the creator is one, and I think there's like this Sufi group who's humanity over religiosity. And so
Mm.
any opportunity that we can get to share that message, that's why it's not about us telling our story for our ego pump. It's not that. I think I speak for Arno too, that we see the opportunities in telling our story, how people can, better society, better themselves, better humanity. So
Absolutely.
privilege is all ours. Thank you. God bless you all.
Oh, well, everything that Mary said about you both is so true and like beyond. And yeah, thank you both for your heartbeats. And I really hope I can see you soon, maybe in New York.
Likewise.
Come over.
And Mary's our hero as well.
I'm learning. I am learning from both of you and everybody in Parents for Peace. And like I said, this organization restored my hope in humanity. So thank you for having me as part of this.
Mission accomplished.
Yep, absolutely.
Have a
Thank you.
good one.